Stealth is a genre of game that I adore, but admittedly not one that I'm particularly great at. It's one that's defined by some really iconic franchises, and one whose mechanics, much like RPGs or action games, have been somewhat subsumed into the overall AAA game structure in some form. But every now and again, a game enters a genre with a core mechanic that's just incredibly interesting. The game might not be the best ever made, it might not be the genre-defining icon, and it might not even sell well, but sometimes it sticks in your head for years and then you end up just needing to talk about it. So anyway, let's talk about Echo.
I feel like shit.
Echo's story begins almost as a horror story. En, our protagonist, wakes up as her ship arrives at the end of a journey that has taken them 100 years. Not her ship exactly, Foster's ship. Who's Foster? En berates herself for getting Foster killed, but she's going to bring him back. London, the AI embedded in the ship, is far more skeptical, but Foster trusted her. Foster gave her his lighter.
I don't like me much either. But I can fix this. I can bring him back.
Their destination is a planet covered in machines, giant industrial cube-like structures that form a grid of unimaginable size, enveloping the entirety of the planet. It's an illegal mining operation, says London. It's a palace, says En. Across the game, the two constantly butt heads, taking turns berating each other and insulting each other's beliefs or lack thereof. En believes Foster is not dead, that she has captured some part of him in a cube that she carries on her back. London is unhappy at this false hope. It's just a cube. Inside the structures is something that most matches En's beliefs. A gaudy, gilded palace, lined with golden banisters and furniture. En finds a way to turn the power on. She finds a machine she believes will bring Foster back. She inserts the cube. The machine fails. The power starts surging. She explores further into the palace. A cold, dead, empty place. And the power cuts out. En's suit's helmet retracts as the air now fills the halls around her. She continues to explore. And the power cuts out. She continues to explore deeper. And the power cuts out. Black, flesh-like blobs are placed around the hall. She continues to explore. And the power cuts out. As En explores and the power cuts continue, the chunks are starting to look more human. More like her. And the power keeps cutting out. They start moving like En. These creatures are echoes. They look like En, they move like En, but they're much simpler. To start with, they hobble, eventually they walk. They get alerted on sight and they will chase En. Thankfully, their only attack is a grab, and they're slow, so it's easy just to vault a banister or open a door, closing it behind you, because they can't open doors. And the power cuts out. The echoes are a dangerous foe. They're alerted on sight, and when they see En, they will sprint at her and attempt to grab her. Trying to jump a banister won't help, they'll just follow. Try to close a door in their face and they'll open it. It's best to simply stay hidden. At least they only have a grab though. En has a gun, and it's a good gun. You line up multiple enemies with it, you can take them out all at once. And the power cuts out. The echoes will shoot En on sight. The moment they see her, shots start ringing through the air, potentially both injuring En and alerting other nearby echoes to come and join the hunt. This is the core mechanic of Echo. This is the puzzle-like loop that we're trapped in, and it's just so incredibly cool. To break it down in gameplay terms, each loop is split into 3 phases. While the lights are up, the palace records our actions. If we sneak around, it records that. If we shoot, it records that. If we open doors, if we use elevators, if we play the piano, if we eat grapes, whatever we do, it records that. Then the lights go off. For a brief few moments we're sneaking in darkness. It's harder to spot the echoes, it's easier to be caught, but we're not being recorded at least. We can do things like shoot. We can sneak up on the enemies and take them out and not teach them to do the same. But the third phase is a full blackout. N-Suit locks up, the lights go off entirely, and the system reboots. The lights come back on, and the echoes now have whatever newfound skills they learned from watching us. I think it's also worth noting the sound design at this point. The lights turning off is signalled by a slow swelling wave of mechanical sound like machinery whirring up into life from across the other side of a building, slowly getting closer and closer. The blackout itself builds up like a wave washing across the player. It's such a simple effect, but I can't overstate how much it adds to the atmosphere of the whole game. Thankfully, echoes only remember the actions taught to them for one loop, so that's where the real fun starts to kick in. You start avoiding opening doors in some loops to reduce the area that the echoes can patrol in. You maybe start sprinting less, so that the echoes aren't all running around and are easier to use takedowns on. Maybe you got spotted last loop and your only chance of survival was to shoot a couple of echoes down. And then this loop, more than ever, you just need to stay hidden. If you can get through this loop, they'll lose those guns. It's a system that would not work without some fantastic level design. Each area feels like a puzzle, putting you in situations where you're confronted with these choices, where it's never just as easy as going, well, I just won't do this thing this loop. And avoiding detection is never simple. Sometimes you need to shoot enemies. Sometimes you need to jump a banister to progress. Sometimes you need to use an elevator to progress. But you always have the rest of your mechanics at your disposal to help fill in that gap. You don't need to teach echoes to do everything every loop. Sometimes it's beneficial enough to just not teach them a specific thing. This loop, they won't know how to use elevators. This loop, they won't know how to run. This loop, they won't be able to walk through water. I won't spoil the story that's told here, but I will say that how it's told is often one of the weaker aspects of Echo. Slow walk and talk sections that feel very Xbox 360 era in their execution are used to convey the conversations between N and London. The story is entirely told through the interactions of these two characters as they bicker and pick at each other's stories. Through these we not only get the events that lead up to the game's intro, but lore dumps, teases and juicy morsels of world building that I actually adore. It's a shame we never got any more games set in the world of Echo, because the devs at Ultra Ultra managed to flesh out such an interesting world in such a small period of time. I'm not fully invested in the way that they tell this story. It's a lot of telling rather than showing, to use the massively overused phrase, but it's made up for by the quality of what is being told. The world and the story are just incredibly interesting. It is something I would like to see more of, and it's a shame that we won't get a chance to see that. It's a shame they never got a chance to do any more with this world, but at least the single game they made with it is great as a standalone piece of art. Echo isn't my favourite game. If I were to make a list, it might not even break into the top 10, but it's a game that I care a lot for. A game that hasn't left my brain since the day I first played it, and a game that I'll recommend any chance I get. I'll be that insufferable fan of it, because someone has to be. So if you made it this far into the video, thank you. I'm very much still learning how to make videos like this. This is taking me probably way longer than it should have to make for such a relatively short video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate any feedback, and yeah, thanks for tuning in.